But my name's Eric, and I work in alumni community engagement, like I said before. And just a couple other things before we begin. This evening is obviously intended to help current students and recent alums connect with Bearcats who are established or becoming established in sustainability-oriented careers. And I can't wait for you to meet our panelists. So we give them a little preview of who's on our panel up here. And then I'm also going to read the land acknowledgement, and then I'm going to introduce our facilitator for this evening. So our land acknowledgement, we are gathered on the land of the Calpuya, who today are represented by the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians, whose relationship with this land continues to this day. We offer gratitude for the land itself, for those who have stewarded it for generations, and for the opportunity to study, learn, work, and be in community on this land. We acknowledge that our university's history, like many others, is fundamentally tied to the first colonial developments in the Willamette Valley. Finally, we respectfully acknowledge and honor past, present, and future Indigenous students of Willamette. All right. And before I introduce Victoria, I also want to thank Jeff for helping us and hosting us here. Jeff is the Associate Director of Career Development, and so he is your on-the-spot connection to this place and for follow-up assistance and support. So I don't know if you want to say anything else, Jeff.
You covered it.
I did, okay, well.
My email's up here. You could also catch up with me again.
Right on. So, yeah, thanks for welcoming us into the space. And then I'll introduce Victoria. Victoria is the Water Quality Initiatives Coordinator for the Oregon Department of Agriculture. She's an environmental science alum from the Willamette College class of 2014, unabashed lover of rural Oregon trivia, and two-time AmeriCorps alum. She was so inspired by her time at Xena Farm that she has been working in food systems and agriculture since graduation. Victoria is also a leader and key organizer for the Alumni Affinity Group, Willamette University Sustainability Network, which I mentioned already. So thanks for hosting this evening, Victoria, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Eric. Hello, everybody. I'm so excited you're here. Thank you for joining us. I think time is one of the greatest gifts that we could give to each other, so I really appreciate that you all have chosen to spend it with us, and thank you all to our panelists as well for making the journey to be here. We at the Willamette University Sustainability Network are a group of many different people interested in sustainability from a bunch of different perspectives, be it social, environmental, economic, what have you. We're a very broad tent. People who are interested in making the world a little bit better, or a lot bit better. You can have big dreams with us, but we're graduates, faculty, folks who are interested in seeing Willamette thrive and build a network around similar-minded people. So I encourage you to join us because we do fun things. You can join now or after you graduate. But one of the things that we do is bring together these career panels to bring people who are in a variety of different spaces within sustainability to meet with current students. The whole not unto ourselves alone are we born thing, right? And give back to our alma mater that helped propel us to where we are today. So we're doing that. We're coming to chat with you. And we have a whole bunch of fun things, or very different life paths. And hopefully you all will gain something from hearing about our stories. So what we're gonna do is we all have little slides, and we have a synopsis to give you all, a very brief, how did we go from Willamette to where we are now? But we would love engagement from you all, because really the point is to help you. So as we're talking, be thinking, like, oh, I wanna know more about that, or how did they make that decision, or why did they decide to do that, or I wish I knew more about this sector. So please be taking notes or jotting things down so that you can be ready to ask us questions, because really, this session is what you make it. And so, in service of that, before we do any of our intros, I'd love to know who you are. So we'll go around, you can give me just a first name and maybe what aspect of sustainability that you're interested in. Well, you all represent a very broad set of interests right here in this room, which is great. And I'm hearing everything from very beginning, trying to figure out what's out there, to seniors about to graduate and wanting to know, okay, very tangibly, what do I do next? And we've got a full spectrum. So I'm gonna hop into my own introduction. Again, be thinking about juicy questions that you wanna know. We'll go through all of our intros, probably like 5 minutes for your intro, how you got from Willamette to where you are now. And then we'll open it up to you all, so you can ask us all those juicy questions. So, for myself, as Eric has already stated, I am the initiatives coordinator for the Oregon State Department of Agriculture. Got my fancy badge and everything. Of note, I am not here on state time. But I was an environmental science major, and when I came to Willamette, I thought I wanted to be an English major. And I got to Willamette, got to take my colloquium class. It was America's Dysfunctional Food System, taught by Professor Seth Kotler. If you have an opportunity to take a class with him, he's phenomenal, in the history department. And it totally changed my whole perspective, because I grew up in suburban and rural California, ate macaroni and cheese out of a box, didn't know that you could make cake any other way than from a box. And it blew my mind that there was a whole other world within food systems. So I got very involved in ag. I was here during the heyday of farm, so I lived on the farm, took advantage of every opportunity to be outside. We did a lot of living and working on the farm. I worked at the Salem Saturday Market for a farm booth. I did winters. I just called up my local mandarin grove near my hometown, and I said, I want to work on a mandarin grove. I just got my hands dirty on all things ag. My goal following graduation was really to try and touch every aspect of the food system myself so that I could understand it. So I've done everything from food service, grocery stores, farmers markets, farming. I've done fisheries food systems. I did wine in Sonoma for a hot minute. But I just did a whole bunch of things to try and gain as much experience as I could. One of the most important things that I did very quickly after graduation was AmeriCorps, which is service. It's a professional volunteer program hosted through the federal government, and you basically are a professional volunteer in a community doing something that mostly nonprofits or city organizations need help with, need capacity to do. And I got to be at the Marion Polk Food Share, children's garden education. Tried really hard to get all the kids to call me Miss Frizzle, but it was the wrong generation, they didn't know who that was. But basically, got given a lot of responsibility and was able to really step into that and learn what it takes to be a professional in that capacity. And then I've sort of bebopped around, mostly through opening doors, by going through the AmeriCorps program that really connected me to a ton of people who then knew that I was a good worker and that I was a good person and connected me with other opportunities. A friend of mine quite literally said, apply for this job, you'll be great at it. And I said, I don't meet all the qualifications. And I applied anyways, and they hired me, and it was a great job at OSU Extension, teaching people how to be small farmers and helping with farm and agriculture education. And similarly, was recommended for a position at the U of O and did a rural community development program there. But really through all of that, my trajectory has been guided by following my interests and then also trusting my network to say, try this, you'll like it. And now I get to lead a team of folks, natural resource specialists at the Oregon Department of Agriculture, and we're all focused on clean water. And I get to be in the messy middle and help people figure out how to straddle, we want clean water for the state of Oregon, for fishing, for recreation, for drinking water. How do we do that in a way that also supports a thriving agricultural economy? And how do we marry the science with people? So, that's my story. That was probably more than 5 minutes. So
It's probably about 5 minutes.
I wasn't timing, but I won't time you guys either, so you're in luck. We're gonna go in the order of how the slides go. So Kendra, would you be so kind as to go next?
Yeah. Hello everyone, my name is Kendra, and maybe like or unlike a lot of my colleagues up here, I did not start with sustainability in mind. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up when I first came to Willamette, so did all of my like graduate general requirements the first couple of years and really fell in love with anthropology. And so graduated with an anthropology degree and a minor in Spanish. And as I was graduating, was interested in working with people in some way, in some capacity, but I didn't really know what to do or where to go. Thought I wanted to go into the federal government to be an international liaison, so like a foreign officer somewhere. Took the test even, you can't pass that test the first time. Thought I was going potentially good, didn't. And so ended back up in Salem, not knowing what I wanted to do. But because of my time in Morocco, made a lot of good friends who were outdoor adventure trip planners, and so I had a really good friend of mine from there being like, hey, I worked for this organization, you'd be a really good trip lead, I can't do it for spring break because I'm still in school, you should apply and talk to these directors and see what happens. So did service learning trips for high schoolers in New Orleans for 8 weeks in 2014. Really enjoyed the service learning piece and talking about like giving back to your community and why it was really important, but also really liked the outside piece. And so with the service learning experience, I came back to Salem and worked at the iBox for a year and a half, which is just down the way over here. Had another really good friend from the bistro who was like, hey, you should, very similar to Victoria, I had a lot of friends who were like, hey, you'd be good for this job, you should apply. So worked over the iBox for a couple of years. And then because of the work I was doing over there with at-risk youth, attempted to go get my master's in social work. Because the world had different ideas for me at the moment, that didn't work out in the way that I had planned, so I ended up doing some, I was a wraparound facilitator, so I did a lot of public health stuff in rural Colorado for about a year, and then got a job at a transitional living facility out at a farm in Klamath Falls, working with 18 to 24-year-olds who were facing mental health challenges, and so taught life skills through farm and homesteading life, which really grew my passion for like growing my own food, sustainability, and food systems in a lot of ways. With that job, there came a lot of, how do I describe it? I guess challenges with leadership and my own position, trying to make things better for the students who were there. They promoted me to adventures coordinator because a lot of the practices there are based around wilderness therapy, but then COVID hit, and so they were like, well, we don't need an adventures coordinator anymore, so bye, you're gone. And then because of my bistro experience, was like, well, it's COVID, nobody needs somebody who wants to be outside and do group things right now. I guess I'll just go work at a bakery for a little bit to figure out what I want to do next. And so attempted grad school again, but this time went into sustainable tourism as a way to figure out how to I grew up in rural Oregon, and so cared a lot about rural places already, and so I was thinking about what it meant to take an extractive economy from those spaces and turn it around so that those small places who have a lot of tourists come in, how do those communities benefit from visitors coming in instead of having all that money go to companies that are from outside and taking it away again. So learned a lot about sustainable tourism and economic development through my time there. I went down to Costa Rica for a little bit. And then again, as life happens, it was just like, all right, Kendra, we don't want you in the space anymore. Let's blow up your life again. So found myself unemployed, living with my sister for a while. But during my time in this sustainable tourism program, I had a graduate assistant position, getting paid to do marketing and website development for the tourism department there. And so the professor that I was working for directly gave me, just kind of took me under his wing, really just taught me how to do website development without the education, which is really lovely of him. And then as I was trying to figure out jobs and what I wanted to do and figure out where I wanted to go, my good friend Victoria over here was like, hey, there's a marketing position open at this rural development nonprofit, you should apply. So it was one of those crazy things of well, it's last minute, I'll try, see what happens. I've now been with Rural Development Initiatives for 3 years. Started out as their marketing, communications, and program coordinator and have been promoted to what I'm now called as the Networks Engagement Manager. So I do a lot of convening of decision makers, rural service providers, and then community members who want to make change and improve rural communities. And we talk around like what gaps what do we need to fill, what role does everyone play, how do we better the work that we're doing so that rural communities can take advantage of and have better access to resources to get to a point where they can, for lack of a better word of saying it right now, so they can thrive and be able to rely on their own people and their own spaces to be able to continue growing and giving back to their own communities and being in like healthy environments. I guess one thing I can say, there's many, as Victoria said, there's many facets to sustainability, and my focus is really social, like rural communities, specifically with like climate change or like new energy, like green energy practices. A lot of those things are happening in rural, and so while I don't work specifically with the sciences in those realms, I do get to work with the people who are affected and impacted by them, in ways that hopefully serves them in a way that then is just the best fit for them in those ways. So that's where I'm at now.
Lean into those networks. Okay, we're going to the other side of the table now. Andy.
Okay. Hey everybody. First of all, I gotta say I love these stories, and I love working in sustainability because of the people who tend to gravitate towards roles in sustainability. Tend to be just good-hearted people with really interesting stories and lives and career paths and so forth. I wish we had more time. I'm old, as you can see, and so my story is kind of long. I won't go through all of it, but we'll try and give you a flavor for it. I'm an Oregonian, native Oregonian. Went to liberal arts college, not Willamette, came to Willamette for graduate school, I don't know what it was, 10 years or something after undergraduate. My undergraduate was in philosophy, politics, and economics. I heard PPLE. What's that? Is that similar? What is that?
Policy law and ethics.
Yeah, so very similar, I think. That was back in 1988, so it was, at that time, there weren't a lot of interdisciplinary degrees. Sustainability wasn't a word, it wasn't in our lexicon at all. There weren't careers in sustainability, it wasn't a concept that existed at the time. When I was midway through college, I decided that I loved learning, and I loved interdisciplinary learning, and I wanted to go into journalism, which is what I did after I graduated, and turned out that where I was doing that was kind of urban-rural interface communities that were going through rapid transition, urbanization and transition. And where I'd gone to college was down in Southern California, so I'd seen sort of sprawling LA and so forth coming from Oregon. I had sort of the Oregon ethos. And the combination of those things, I think, kind of lit my interest in environmental, preserving the quality of life in Oregon, essentially. And so after a couple of years of doing newspaper reporting, I wanted to sort of move in that direction. I sort of was beginning to feel a calling. Went to work in the legislature for the Environment and Energy Committee. That was a limited duration job because of the way that the Oregon, at that time, the Oregon legislature only met every 2 years. So then I got an internship. It was a 6-month full-time and paid internship, which was nice, with Metro up in Portland, doing recycling market development. And I had seen there had been waste-related legislation that had come through the committee, along with energy and other environmental policy and so forth. But this was something that sounded really interesting. It was something that had never been done before. This was when curbside recycling was just starting to come in, and we're starting to get a lot of these materials being collected, and they needed to have markets, and that sounded really interesting. And parlayed that, there were actually 2 internships. I negotiated to, rather than having a single 6-month, I negotiated to have a full year, full-time paid. That was nice. Then when that ended, I got hired on as a regional planner, and continue to, in a new space, something that hadn't been done before, trailblazed, that was great, got promoted, moved into another aspect of waste, came back to graduate school here because I wanted to explore other possibilities. That was when the internet was just coming in and GIS was just coming in, and I had always been interested in technology. Where I was working had a great sort of world-class GIS. So when I came back to Atkinson here, my goal when I came in was that I wanted to pivot, go to work for a company that made tools to use resources more efficiently. I wound up, like a lot of what you've heard here, through friends and networking, getting connected on with a software development company, custom software development company that was a leader in integrating GIS, internet and database technologies, and was producing some of the first internet mapping applications before Google even existed. And then I got called by some friends who I had worked with at Metro. They were now working somewhere else. Had put up the world's first high-resolution Earth imaging satellite. Now you see these images for free on Google, but at the time they were like, this was licensed spy satellite technology that Lockheed Martin and Raytheon had formed a joint venture to commercialize. And so I was, in both of those roles, I was working between clients and technical specialists to define needs, priorities, goals, those kinds of things, structure, scope projects, and then manage those projects. Anyway, a lot happened. I can't go through all of it, but lots of twists and turns. Some common themes are, I felt a calling. I was open to possibilities. My friends and I had a robust network, and people. I found most of my jobs people calling me and saying, "Hey, we think your weird background would be a good fit for this thing that's never been done before." And so then there's like no competition, which is great. And so networking really is the way to go. Anyway, there's two. I can't really encapsulate all of it. I've worked in public and private sector, small early stage businesses to Nike, Fortune 500, global, international, blah blah, and now I'm done CSO for a company that is developing. It's actually a mining exploration and development company, which seems odd for a guy who's like dedicated my life to circularity. But we want to develop mines the right way for critical minerals that are going to come out of the ground because there's, no matter what, because there's going to be a structural deficit for things like cobalt and copper and rare earths, and you're hearing all the geopolitics around this with China and the international trade agreements, and the geopolitics around these minerals is worse than oil, and we need them to transition to clean energy to enable AI and so forth. So we want to do it right from the beginning. I didn't work I went to college in Southern California. The companies that I worked for when I was doing geospatial work were Esri business partners. I did go to a number of Esri business partner conferences and user conferences and all that stuff, and work closely with them. Yeah. Well, geospatial technologies, whether it's GIS or remote sensing or whatever, they can be applied in a lot of different ways, many of which support sustainability.
I have a lot of questions for you, but we'll hold them. We'll keep on the tech train.
Yes.
We'll hear from Caitlin next.
Great, thank you. you can read that slide yourself. I will not read it, so if I skip anything and you're curious and you want me to talk about it, let me know. I am the other AmeriCorps alum. I came here to Willamette and majored in economics for my undergrad. And at the end of it, I just really knew, I took a lot of classes with Negri, I don't think he's here anymore. But I knew that I had a passion for sort of the more social side of economics, right? Like, who is this not working for? Who are we not really talking about in these problems and equations? And so AmeriCorps felt like a good place to go. We were also, this is gonna age me, but we were also in the middle of the Great Recession. And so there were not a lot of jobs, but luckily Obama had put a lot of funding into things like AmeriCorps. So I got a position working in Portland for the city of Portland. And at this time, I was still like, I'm interested in the social side, but I had no sustainability hopes or dreams. Or I'm also from rural Oregon, and I sort of blame it on that. It's like, we didn't talk about it in that way, right? And so even coming here, it was like, that's not my thing, you know? And then during AmeriCorps, I was working with low-income micro-enterprises and workforce programs. And we actually surveyed the participants in the low-income microenterprise program and asked them what would be helpful from my year of service. And they said a sustainable business program. So I was like, I better learn about sustainable business, I guess. So in a year
Or creative.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and again, like at that time, there weren't a ton of jobs in sustainability. This wasn't.
We're still making it up.
100%, yes. We'll get to that still. Yeah. So yeah, I have a whole year to build this program. We ended up partnering with Portland State University. It was so fulfilling to work with these micro enterprises and help them find a better, market space for them, get access to different clientele, because, in Oregon, people care about sustainability. And so coming out of that, I think one of the best things about AmeriCorps for me was you knew you had a year and, you're a volunteer. So my quote unquote boss, who felt more like a mentor, really helped me with I had a goal to do one informational interview a week while I was there. And she connected me with so many people and ended up, I think at one point I was having 3 or 4. And you never know what you're gonna get out of those. You're not asking for a job, so you could get anything. I got some great advice on when to go on vacation in February. Because that's when the weather's really terrible and the holidays are over. But you also can get really good connections that could turn into something then or very later. So much later, after that year of service, I think, a lot of you are saying all these connections, but you also were like, I think I'm interested in this, and you started pulling that thread, and you said you went to Atkinson to change directions, and I wrote a 10-year plan, because that's how I am, to be a sustainability manager. And at a few companies that I was really interested in, the energy space was really interesting to me. So there was PGE, Northwest Natural, Columbia Sportswear. Anyway, I only say that because I got to, after 8 years, I got to be the sustainability manager at PGE, which was awesome. And I built that up, really getting a lot of experience at first in the energy industry, which helps me a lot now in the tech industry. You brought up AI. We have some very interesting, I'll say, use that term, problems to solve about how we're going to sustainably power all of this artificial intelligence that we are using. I work for a company called F5 now. I'm obviously skipping over a lot of those transitions and stuff. I'm happy to talk more about those, but I think again another through line here is things get blown up or COVID hits or whatever it may be, and you continue to be
Shit happens.
yes willing to learn. I think has been a really big part of my career, and I also went and got my MBA because I wanted to learn about all the different parts of business so that I could influence them. I didn't get a sustainable MBA. I said, I know about sustainability, that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. I need to understand the finance department and marketing and organizational design was like something I had never even learned about. And that helps me so much now. So back to where I am now, we're a cybersecurity firm, and I lead a team of mostly analysts that have a lot of them have environmental science backgrounds, and we do things like set our climate target, track our progress towards that climate target. I'm in charge of our annual sustainability and ESG reporting, which is not super exciting, but has had a lot of change recently that has taken a lot of keeping up with. And then also on our social side, I get to lead the team who's really looking into human rights. Also some of the things that you were talking about where our materials are coming from, supply chain sustainability, in addition to like our philanthropic and volunteerism efforts too. So obviously, or maybe not obviously, I work for a private company, and I will say that that's not necessarily where I thought I would end up. But after doing that AmeriCorps year, I felt like business was where the biggest impact was negatively, so I could have the biggest impact positively there. And obviously, businesses produce the most emissions, so by reducing those, we are having a pretty large impact, and our individual is kind of a drop in the bucket. But that is not against any recycling or those kind of things. But it's a different world, right? And I guess the last thing I want to mention is that we need everybody in sustainability. So like you're talking about sort of, behind the scenes, I've got great partners in internal audit and finance, and honestly, they have helped me champion some of our biggest wins ever. And policy, like one of the biggest things that I'm proud of in my career is I wrote PGE's climate target. It was a weird situation where the board was like, we need something good, what do you have? And I was like, this? I made a slide one time, and they took it, and that turned into Oregon law for emissions reduction from energy usage, or for energy utilities. So like, also I guess expect the unexpected, I don't know, but that was partnering really closely with policy people and our decarbonization team. So being able to, partner with others and really being willing to learn is so huge, or has
Well,
been.
that slide undoubtedly was made possible because of 10 years
Yes.
or more of other experience beforehand
Yes.
that made it so you could produce the slide that then went on to
Thank you, yes. It looked like
Get
a
a
very
life.
simple culmination of 10 years,
Yeah.
but yes. Yes.
Yeah, so you never know when you plant all these seeds, and then you just kind of don't know when they're going to come to fruition. Same with those relationships, you don't know when somebody's going to call you up and say, hey, there's this, you've heard it here, I've had 5 or 6 of those, where, hey, there's this opportunity that you'd be great for, really, I wasn't even looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and don't doubt LinkedIn, because my
Yeah.
this job I'm in right now,
Yeah.
LinkedIn, blind, they were like, we need somebody.
And if you're kind of out there on the frontier, if you know a little bit more than everybody else, you can kind of create your own path.
I think that was also a good point about like liberal arts, you don't always walk away with like very tangible cookie cutter skill into job, but we are very good at learning as Bearcats, and we are very good at critical thinking.
Yep.
And that is also a theme for
Yeah, I think liberal arts is the best, especially at this point in time with AI coming in. Like, you need to know how to ask the right questions. You need to know how to evaluate if what you're getting out of AI makes any sense. You need to know how to bring people together, influence, work across boundaries.
Okay, before we get too far into the weeds, we have one more panelist that I would love to hear from. It's Joshua. You are our most recent graduate.
You're at the beginning of all this.
Yeah. And for those who are not aware, Joshua was in your seats last year, on this day.
I graduated in May. So, story of how it got to where I'm working is not as long. I'm working for the City of Salem Urban Forestry Department. So, in the summer, it was mostly doing tree inventory and watering trees the city planted. So, that tree inventory, adding to the city's database of trees so they can know what they have and manage them better using GIS on a phone to walk around and put dots on a map and look at the tree health. And then today we're picking up trees from a nursery that we'll be planting for the next few months. And also will sometimes help with tree removal and tree pruning. And the summer between my second and third years, I did almost the same thing. It was in urban forestry intern, but just as a summer job. And then I graduated, and then I did my public health thesis on urban forestry, the intersection of urban forestry and public health. And I did an informal internship with the same department, helping with tree planting there. I also did a partnership with North Salem High School, teaching them about urban forestry and then tree. And then when I was doing that, my former boss said, Josh, you want to do it again? This time, instead of 3 months, it's a 9-month position. So it ends in March, so I'll look for jobs again. I think something that helped me get the job the first time after my sophomore year was probably the forest management class here. At the end of the semester, we were told to choose between 6 different projects, and I happened to choose a project that was about an old ash borer. And that was discovered in Oregon earlier that year. It's something that urban forestry departments in Oregon really wanted to know more about. So when they heard that I was looking at that, I think that really helped.
Great, thank you for that. So, now you have heard from us, and hopefully something has piqued your interest. But I would love to know what else you want to know more about. So who has a juicy question?
Yeah, so we don't do okay. We're in an exploration and development phase. We're focused on Chile, developing supply for North America. We have a letter of intent with a company that is developing US-based refining capability. With finite resources, it's hard to say like sustainable unless it's married with downstream circularity, which is sort of beyond the scope of what our business does. but you need to get these materials into the stream of commerce, and then the circular economy efforts need to also progress in parallel, which, working within the industry, I hope to influence. In terms of the mine site itself, there are now standards that exist that have been developed through global multi-stakeholder processes to define what good looks like. There are voluntary standards that then, oftentimes highly influence mandatory public policies in different countries around the world. Because you're talking about global industry and you're talking about a lot of different kinds of stakeholders, you first need to define globally what good looks like and be able to articulate that in some kind of a way that everybody understands and agrees with, covering environmental, social, and governance. And then the mine can be developed to that standard. And we've adopted one's a standard and one's more of a disclosure framework that draws on a lot of different standards. And there are some standards for carbon and water biodiversity and so forth that are not mining specific and others that are mining specific. So we've adopted one that's called Digby, one that's called IRMA. IRMA has third-party independent assurance at the mine site, so they go down to the mine site. That's a way for big brands, whether it's car brands, electronics, whatever, Ford, GM, Mercedes, Apple, Microsoft, whatever, they then can put into their material procurement specifications the cobalt or the copper or the rare earths, whatever, need to come from an IRMA mine. So that's what we're lining up to. And then in terms of transparency, we're aligning with this one U.S.-based refiner. We'll have a relatively short supply chain, and we'll develop it from the beginning to have full transparency as well. And we'll disclose under both Digby and IRMA.
That was a juicy question. Thank you. What other questions do we have? Sorry,
Sure,
I'll follow up.
Yeah, I would say for me, in AmeriCorps, since you have visibility into the position that you're applying for, I got the one that I wanted, and I wanted to be in Portland, so you're saying that's what you dream, that's what you wanna do, I would say go for it, and you'll figure out if it's like the white savior opportunity. Most decisions are changeable or reversible. That's actually what my CEO says all the time. So I would say follow your gut, follow your passion and intuition. And you can always, take a turn later.
I did 2 terms of AmeriCorps, and my first term was I really wanted to work for the American Folk Food Share because I thought they were very cool. I was really interested in food security, and so I applied specifically for a position with the food share that happened to be AmeriCorps, and then I discovered a whole world of service. Oh, all of these people who care about the greater good, these are my people. And then my second term was immediately after that with an Oregon-based AmeriCorps program called Resource Assistance for Rural Environments, and it's an Oregon-based Peace Corps. So it's like you get connected to a rural community, and they sort of do this funny matching process, but you sort of like end up in a community that needs your help, and you get to go have basically a 1-year version of Peace Corps. So I sort of pursued both of those positions because I wanted to know more about what they did, and so I was excited about the opportunity to learn more, and I really liked that it was only a year, so if I hated it, for a year. lots of friends who've done Peace Corps, and most of them have really great things to share about that experience. Many of them are also grad people who are just like good folks to hang out with. Did you want to talk about going to South America for grad school?
I can talk a little bit about it.
Because a different option is to pursue a grad program that will send you to
Yeah, so what I
a
did,
country.
I've applied for grad school twice and both times have never finished, which kind of goes to this idea of like, if it doesn't feel right and it doesn't feel like the best decision anymore, it's okay to switch and go in a different direction. It's not a failure if you don't finish a program. But yeah, the sustainable tourism program I went into was at the University of North Texas, mainly because the first year was in Texas, but then they sent me to Costa Rica for the second year afterwards, and you actually got to work with organizations doing sustainable tourism efforts in South Central Costa Rica, which really fed into my desire to work with people and then also to practice my Spanish. To this day, can understand a lot of Spanish and have a hard time speaking. I spent a month in Guatemala last year to like practice that. So it's been a dream of mine to become fluent in Spanish as well. But yeah, grad school is also a great way. And then too, right, there's also, doesn't have to be service oriented. There's so many programs around. You just have to kind of do research around it. But like, you can do like an immersion program that gives you the focuses on the topics you want to focus on, or I don't know. I would say AmeriCorps is great, Peace Corps is great, and if it doesn't quite feel like the right direction, or you're nervous about being in a situation where you can't really change it and you're kind of stuck in it, Google is great to kind of just figure out like what else exists out there for opportunities like that.
And one other thing too, because Caitlin mentioned doing one informational interview a week, which is very impressive. But you can absolutely you can absolutely contact programs and say, hey, I'd love to talk to somebody who did this before, because they'll give you a much different perspective than if you talk to the program staff. Like program staff are gonna say, I worked for an AmeriCorps program, so I can tell you. They're like, it's great. And if you talk to people who've done it, like I just want to know someone like an alum, somebody who's been on the other side, a Peace Corps, returned Peace Corps volunteer, whatever, like talk to those folks. That's sort of networking, but you're just sort of getting to the people who have had that lived experience and can tell you really explicitly what that was like. Thanks for that. Another question over here?
I will say especially if we're talking about programs like RARE, which put you in, like back with an organization in a rural community, you fill the gap that they need, right? So a lot of nonprofits exist out there right now in particular who are looking for grant writers and finance humans and to do like grant compliance and reporting, which is a lot of like RARE
Resource assistance for rural environments.
yeah.
Fortunately for seniors, I'm taking a year off because of all the federal shenanigans.
But there are a lot of nonprofits out there who are looking for people who are interested more in that financing piece right now. So you do have a lot of opportunities currently to, at least if you don't want to focus and do the sciencey pieces, you can at least go offer your services to help and support nonprofits who are focusing on environmental science and climate change. That's a great question. Really good. So I share a lot of resources for my nonprofit. And like look for a lot of job openings and I'm sharing them out. And a lot of the titles for those positions is like finance advisor or specialist, grant compliance manager, support specialist, finance coordinator. So if you type in things like finance position and nonprofit in Oregon, you probably would find something along those lines. It might take a few different combinations of those words together to find what you want, but yeah, those are the main
And
titles.
And if you network, or, if you have informational interviews and you describe what you're interested in, those folks will help you
Yeah.
get to the right people and the right organizations and the right opportunities.
And if you're open to private companies, we have like this whole new sort of pathway to an ESG controller position, which I've been thinking about. But we need, financial analysts is probably what you would see a lot of the positions posted as that care about sustainability and ESG and are bring both of those worlds together because regulation at least was dragging a lot. What we've been doing hopefully will be again soon, and that regulation has big impacts on our financial reporting. So it's actually a very needed role or a set of expertise in the private sector as well.
It comes in bursts, but on the Sustainability Network LinkedIn group, our members are pretty good about reposting job opportunities that they become aware of. So if you're in that group, you'll see them a little more easily. And the other thing I would say is make an appointment with Jeff and he can hang out with you and guide you through some of this too.
And I would say one other thing, if you've got a background in biology or environmental science, but you're finding that you're really interested in like people or organizations or that sort of thing, another great space to look into is soil and water conservation districts and watershed councils. They do a lot of really cool on the ground work, like river restoration projects, and they really need people who can wear many hats and do like the office work and the grant applications. Soil and water conservation districts, yeah. They were actually formed after the Dust Bowl, when everybody's farms blew away. Yes, but they do a lot of really cool work now, and there's tons of them. There's like 45 in the state of Oregon, and a lot of them are really scrappy nonprofits. And for people who are like looking to get your feet under you, working with scrappy nonprofits or startups or like small organizations is a great way to try a bunch of things because they're gonna need you to do a lot of things. So you can try a lot, see what you like, see what you don't, and then you can also take on a lot of responsibilities, build your resume, right? That skill set, if they only have, it's an organization of 4 people, you're gonna do a lot of stuff. And you can put a lot of skills down. Yes, yeah. I think we have time for maybe like 2 more questions, so. Front row, looking at you.
I think Josh had something to say.
Oh, Josh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'm just going to say my friend did a Rural Development AmeriCorps program, and this was what he was doing, but he said that one of the things they were looking for the most was grant writers.
Mm-hmm.
And also, and that's a different topic, was something I forgot to say earlier, is that I realized that if you have a 4-year degree in a related field, you become eligible to take the exam to become an arborist after a year of work, so that's something I'm considering too.
Sweet, nice, that's really awesome. Yeah, science writing and grant writing, very similar, that's my hot take. Okay.
I think, well, I mean, I'm just gonna reiterate some of the things that others, or, put an exclamation next to some things that others have said, but I think your first couple of jobs, like for your first 5 years, really just be thinking about it as what is going to give you the best learning opportunity, and not really be thinking too much about them. I mean, you have to be able to make how much income you need to make, but I think really looking at it as what are going to be the best learning opportunities, and then you'll find your way based on that. And this is the time when you're younger is the time. You sort of say like take risk, but it's more like you have the opportunity to make adjustments. It's easier to make adjustments when you're younger.
You have the privilege of a safety net. We obviously had that, right, for AmeriCorps, not everybody does, and we got to learn a lot during those years.
Yeah, and I think too, if you talk to people, like regardless of where they're at in their career, a lot of that exploration happens like in your early 20s when you're trying to figure out what do I like, what do I not like.
Yes.
Because if you don't have a partner or a pet or a kid or like a house, or you don't have things that are responsibilities that are tying you to a particular place or tying you to making a certain income level, then you have the freedom to see what you can do, and you won't have those responsibilities. So like this is the time.
It's the time, and like others have said, trust your gut, follow your heart. Listen for your calling. It's there. You just gotta trust it.
And the skeptic, don't be loyal to a company they are not loyal to you.
Yeah.
One more
That's
question.
true.
Okay, one last one to close out.
Good question. So I mentioned I worked at PGE, and I think, something that I learned from being there for 5 years and like listening closely to what wasn't being said was they only hire mid-career people. So that's not a place to start, right? Like the electric utility. I would say, so I did an internship at the Energy Trust of Oregon. If you've heard of them, that was a great experience. I also did an internship at Portland Parks and Recreation, but it was sustainability focused. So I was looking at energy bills across their community centers. We applied for a grant, things like that. So, those internships at a nonprofit, at a city organization, obviously at AmeriCorps, I ended up working for the city of Portland there. Now in my role, I do hire analyst positions that are usually right out of like graduate school is what I'm getting a lot of, and honestly, I work for a global company, so cost of labor is something that we have to think about. And right now I hire a lot in Guadalajara. They have wonderful talent and skills. So I guess it's just something to be aware of, or maybe something to work with, is that if you did want to move somewhere else and work for, a company like F5 or whomever, that might actually help you get your foot in the door if that's something you're open to while you have the flexibility. Is that helpful? Right.
Thank you all so much for your wonderful insights and your stories, and thank you all for all of your great questions. They were juicy. I was not disappointed. I've heard a lot about the importance of relationships, the importance of networking, a little bit about pioneering your path, which I think is going to be so relevant, especially for you all as the world is very much in flux. So carving your own way and finding what works for you, I think is very solid life advice, and a lot about following your interest and just going through the next door rather than trying to have it all mapped out. This is a great conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on my panel, everybody.
Thanks to our panelists.